So we thought we'd bring a little bit of loose women to the stage this afternoon. And thank you again for your participation and energy. The day's been absolutely phenomenal. We've got some incredible ladies on stage today who's going to share a bit of a story. But the Russian doll probably needs some context. So when we had one of the conversations originally with Christian, we wanted to demonstrate to everybody that people's roles, people's careers are not linear. And if everyone can just visually imagine the Russian doll, I don't know if it will come on or not, it starts small and it starts to grow. And the whole point there is that, you know, the bigger the doll or the smaller the doll doesn't mean that you're accomplished or that you're finished. And actually throughout your career, you'll have very different versions of yourself. And you should be proud at whatever point you are of the Russian doll in your journey, in your career, in your personal life or professional life, because you're still a whole person. So the context of the Russian doll is, it's a journey. And actually the journey will never end and will continue to continue. So I want to pass the mic shortly over and across. And you're going to hear a version of honesty from these ladies in terms of opportunities that they've had within the workplace and also obstacles that they've had within the workplace, because there's no point being on this stage if all we're going to give you is the rose-tinted version of women in leadership, because we all live in the real world. And there are some true obstacles, but there are some also incredible opportunities that we've all had, and they're going to bring that to life for you.
Thank you, Rachel. Hello, everyone. I'm Katherine from Travelodge. I feel really lucky about my career because I'm doing what I always wanted to do, and that's working in the hospitality industry. I worked in the local pub/hotel/restaurant when I was 14, doing pretty much every job you could imagine. And that's where I fell in love with it. And I'm still here quite a few years later, although we won't put numbers on anything today. I started off doing an apprenticeship. I worked my way up in hotel operations, meetings and events. And then I had a kind of fall into HR and really haven't looked back when I sort of turned that piece of getting excited about creating a great customer experience to getting excited about creating a great colleague experience. And there's sort of been progression to where I am now. And that's the lovely story that I tell many, many times when I stand in front of a group of school children or care leavers or the different people that we're doing when you go and talk about why hospitality is a great career. And it was when Rachel was talking about how do we talk about the blockers, how do we be brutally honest about what we've overcome. And I realised that I've put quite a lot of them to the back of my mind over the years. And I saw a reel this week, which was kind of up for International Women's Day, and it said, a big shout out to the women who sit in their cars in tears saying, I can't do this anymore, only to dry their tears, take a deep breath, and go back to doing what they thought a moment ago they couldn't do. And Claire mentioned earlier those moments of sitting in cars in tears, and I thought back to go, what are the moments in my career where I've felt like that? And there's a few that jumped out at me. I had a bloody horrible situation when I was an apprentice chef in a male-dominated kitchen, which was a bit of a toxic environment, as most of them were a few decades ago. I had a really difficult return back from maternity leave. The person who'd been brought in to do my maternity cover and had changed everything was then put in as my number 2. So I came back completely undermined and in that horrible stage of going, oh my God, you know, I've got a baby that I'm leaving in childcare. And then most recently, about 5 years ago, my dad was diagnosed with dementia. And no one quite warns you at that time when your kids are teenagers and needing you a bit less. All of a sudden, your hormones are going completely bonkers, but also your parents start needing you a lot more. And those have kind of been the moments that really stand out as the, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. I need to hide under my duvet and go and do something a lot less stressful. And so when I was reflecting on how I overcame those, it all came down to the people that were involved in it. Back when I was in that situation in the kitchen, there was someone in HR who believed me and listened to me and created a safe space for me, while many other people were trying to brush something under the carpet. When I came back from mat leave, I had a male hotel manager who really, really helped me remember that this was my role that I was coming back to, and I'd earned that job. And it didn't matter who my number 2 was and what they were trying to do. This was my role, and as long as I wanted it, I could stay in it. I had an HR director who looked at my first panicked flexible work application that I put in for school hours and went, there's no way this is practical. Let's sit down and chat and let me talk about my experience when I started with kids at school and how we can make this work. And she helped me come up with a pattern that worked for me. And then I got permission, not written permission, but just real permission to be able to go, it's okay to join the phone call with your dad's doctor and take him to the hospital. And that was from my stakeholders at work to go, it's all right to have other commitments. It's all right to need to switch your phone off for a bit and go and deal with that. So when we look at give to gain and what that's been for me, all the way through, it's been other people giving a bit of their time, a bit of their empathy, a bit of their understanding. And what I've gained from it is a career that I'm able to stand up and talk about in front of other people. And I've got over those moments where I've been in tears in the car and been able to stand there and go, no, I can do this now. And I'll hand over to Kirstie, who's now had a super inspirational journey back from the Middle East and has made it here.
Thank you. Just on that, I think probably up until yesterday I was in Doha and, just had to get out and relied on 6 amazing women who I literally met by the pool, who rallied their husbands and their partners, and we all managed to get drivers and get out of through Saudi. So absolutely awful situation out there, but massive respect to everybody in the hospitality industry that in Qatar just still can't do enough for you. And that makes me really proud to have worked in this industry all my life. Because, they were absolutely petrified as well, but their whole mantra was around doing the right thing. And I think that's probably my mantra in terms of I've grown up in the business of hospitality. I, like Katherine, have done varying different roles, but knew I wanted to be in the people leadership role, being HR, and actually just wanting to do the right thing by people has probably been my biggest enabler. And always thinking, is this the right thing to do? And probably, just different things. I dare say some of the biggest blockers in my life were women in the jobs before me. And actually, my determination and resilience was, okay, I'm going to do it anyhow. And only when I was older did I still kept in touch with them. And actually, just the learnings that their role, they were the one person in that job. So their mantra was to protect the seat rather than let other people take the seat. And I think that's been a big driver in my career as well. So probably the inspiration has come from women who didn't want to lift me up, but finding really key stakeholders, but also understanding that they went through a much tougher version of the industry than I have done. And just respecting that. That's probably taught me resilience, and that it isn't just about surviving the culture that you inherited, but changing it. So I think my enabler is really being able to kind of choose abundance over, scarcity, and it's about opening the doors for people and making that room bigger. And I've been able to do that through my career, and also people have been able to do that in return. And I think that's been a really good way. That's kind of, those 2 or 3 things you think, I remember that time when someone did that for me. So they're probably my blocker and enabler.
Thank you. I'm Mel from Hollywood Bowl. Thank you all for taking the time and staying late towards the end. It's really interesting when you think about the enablers and blockers to your career and to your life, and actually listening to some of the inspirational stories that we've heard throughout the day. It's amazing how many similarities that we face. We all have our different issues and our different problems, but in terms of how we overcome them and how we work together, I think that's been a real theme and something that I've felt super proud of throughout the whole day. So as was discussed before, I was the first person in my family to go to university, and I was incredibly lucky. You know, I had a really supportive family, parents who believed in me, even though it wasn't something that came naturally to them to sort of think about that sort of that higher education and getting a degree. They supported me throughout. And in order to fund myself through university, I just worked part-time in retail, like a lot of us did. But again, very early on in my retail career, I met a female manager who just really believed in me, enabled me at a very, very young age. I think I was 19, and gave me my first supervisory Sunday supervisor I was at the time. And, you know, and I guess that's where my love of leadership, albeit on a very small scale, started. After uni, like lots of us, didn't know 100% what to do. So I thought, well, I've worked in retail, I'll go do a graduate training program. Which I did at Debenhams, and again at a very young age, I was sort of leading quite a big team of about 40 people, and really learnt the hard way. You know, I had some incredibly challenging people that I managed at that point. Many of them whom thinking, who's this young female trying to sort of run the department? And you know, it was a steep learning curve for sure. But I think, and these guys mentioned it as well, you know, that the biggest thing and my biggest enabler is probably the resilience I've built over my life and over my early career, but it's just continued throughout. And that's really helped me through some challenges in my personal life as well. So my first move into HR, I worked with a really great female manager. I was a recruitment officer, and she gave me my first opportunity. And that was the start of my HR career, and I realized this is what I wanted to do and this is what I loved. And when Stuart introduced me before, you know, I've worked a lot in sort of hospitality, health clubs, and been incredibly lucky, but also through real hard work, resilience, determination, you know, really focused on my career, to the detriment at times of my personal life. I left it quite late to have children and then had a lot of problems. I was really lucky though. I still managed to have my 2 boys through IVF. Being an older mum has some challenges, but it's really rewarding as well, because you're sort of old enough, mature enough to be able to deal with, you know, some of the issues it throws at you. And I went back to work, certainly not after 5 days, as we heard before, but quite soon. But I was lucky. I had my mother-in-law to take care of my kids, and my husband took some time off as well. So we really sort of went at this as a family, and that was a real enabler for me. However, just under 3 years ago, I lost my husband to cancer. So that was a really, really tricky time for me. Full-time job, 2 very young boys. So that was when my resilience really, I guess, came out. And my boss at the time, who was a male, so, you know, it's not just females who've helped me through my careers, he was absolutely fabulous. And he just gave me the flexibility I needed to be able to do my job, but also, as we talked about, you know, being there for the boys and, you know, making sure I can make it to parents' evening or the rugby fixture, or I'm missing the jiu-jitsu performance today. So you don't get to everything, But yeah, so from that perspective, I've been lucky. I've surrounded myself with really supportive friends, family, and also colleagues. You know, my team have been absolutely amazing. I think what surrounding yourself with fabulous people allows you to do is really, as we've talked about, then you know, be able to give back to other people as well. And some of the things that I'm super proud of in my people team in Hollywood Bowl, 80% of them have been promoted or developed into new roles throughout the time. You know, when I joined Hollywood Bowl, and it was 14 years ago, so it was a long time, we had 1 female general manager. Now over a third of our managers are female. 50% of our group directors are female, and 50% of our PLC board is also female. So we've worked incredibly hard over the years in order to really sort of to build that up and as we've said, give something back. So yeah, I think I've been able to have a really rewarding career doing a job that I love. And a lot of that is down to the people around me who've been incredibly supportive and enabled that to happen.
Thank you. Wow, how do you follow that, right? So inspirational listening to everybody here. So I'm Champa Magesh, and I run a software business. And the reason I'm here is because we work very closely with hospitality businesses. So we feel part of the hospitality industry. But I'm not a hospitality expert by any means. I started off actually qualified as a software engineer long time ago, before software was even a thing. And actually my first job, and I qualified in India Columbia, and my first job, I was very proud because it was very academic. I was always super competitive. I always had to be first. I always had to get all the medals. And I went after the most prestigious job on campus because of the prestige that went with it, because I can. I wanted to prove that I could. And I got the job. It was very well paid. But a month before joining it, it was a multinational bank. It was a graduate recruitment program. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be like yet another bright person who comes off of an assembly line, who has a job in a multinational bank. Somehow, it didn't feel exciting enough for me. So without any other job to hand, I just wrote in and said, I'm not joining you. And, everybody made fun of me because now I ended up being the one person in the class who didn't have a job. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just didn't know. I knew I didn't want to do this. It wasn't exciting enough. It was what everybody else was doing, and that was not good enough for me. And then, after several months of struggling, I found a very poorly paid job in a mining startup. And I was the only woman in that entire setup. And of course, everybody else I was working with were geologists, were people who worked with dynamites, people who cut rocks. I mean, I'd never seen a granite block in my entire life. I was hired, presumably, to set up their IT room, like dot matrix printers and all of that. That was supposed to be my job. But few months in, I was doing finance, I was doing budgeting, I was doing logistics, sales and marketing, advertising. I was shipping dynamite around the country, which I enjoyed immensely. I was getting calls from all sorts of people from the mines at midnight because that was the only time they could call me for when they wanted supplies. I had the most fun ever, even till now, even though I love what I do, that was the most fun job I have ever had, and I made no money out of it whatsoever. So that was a lesson to myself, that fun and money may not always be proportional. So that was, I don't know if it's an opportunity or a blocker, because I always think of opportunity and blockers as the same sides, two sides of the same coin, so I really struggled with that question. The second sort of big breakthrough in my life was I met my husband. He was working in Kuwait at the time, and that was between the two Gulf Wars. So your story about escaping the Middle East, I had to evacuate Kuwait with a 10-day-old baby because Saddam threatened to invade Kuwait. So I have experience of that. It's quite frightening. So when that happened, I decided I must leave Kuwait. And at that time, I knew I wanted to qualify in business. So I went over to the US. My husband was in Kuwait, and my mom, volunteered to take care of my son. So I missed all of his milestones. I missed his first words. I missed potty training, which I don't regret at all, But that was really hard. I remember I had taken a 20-hour flight to Arizona from Kuwait, and I cried the entire time. The poor stewardess thought I was dying because I couldn't stop crying. It was just, I couldn't look at the picture of a baby for 2 years because of what I was doing. That whole mom guilt thing was very real for me and very real for me for many years. But the big breakthrough was that was my first business job. I got to run a big production line for Cisco Systems where I ran a production line for multi-billion-pound run rate routers. And again, I enjoyed that immensely. It was a fantastic job. It was my dream job. But then a blocker happened. 9/11 happened. And three months into my dream job, I was at risk of being made redundant. And I came through that, and the way I came through that was I sat through and thought, well, I'm going to be made redundant anyway. I have 3 months notice period, 3 months consultation, 3 months notice period. So I have 6 months, right? This is my dream job. So I can't lose anything. I know what I'm going to lose. So I might as well do the best job, just enjoy myself. So and because 9/11 happened, we had spare parts and inventory all over the world in all the wrong places. I worked the phones, I used my contacts, I moved stuff over, I secured capacity in various freight companies. And lo and behold, in 4 months, I was the top performing person in the company because I just performed with no fear of failure whatsoever. And so they couldn't let me go, and I ended up with a promotion out of it. So that was a big lesson, and I think it's something that has always fueled me, which is that, failure is in a state of mind, really. And I think it was Marta who said, if you change how you look at something, you immediately the outcomes change. And that was, brought home to me because that was a very lived example for me, because I changed how I looked at it, and the outcome changed. Outcome changed in a way that I couldn't imagine. So in terms of women who have inspired me, I have to say my mom. She's a homemaker, but she's been the symbol of resilience and tenacity and fortitude for me. I've been very fortunate to have a family that's been very supportive. But when I think of, apart from the female bosses I've had who have all given me great opportunities, and I've been very fortunate, a female figure that has really inspired me is I watched the movie On the Basis of Sex, which is Ruth Bader Ginsburg's life story. And it just brought home to me so many experiences that I've had in my life. There is that scene where she is the top performing person in Harvard Law and Yale Law, and she's edited the magazine, and she goes to a top partnership firm, and the partner says, I can't hire you because you're too pretty. What will my wife say? And I had an experience in Kuwait when I was applying for a job to be a business analyst, where someone said, well, I don't think you understand. You're a woman. You should really be applying for the receptionist role. And I thought, my God, is this the 20th century, or did I miss something? It's like the 18th century. And so that scene really brought home to me that unfortunately, not a lot has changed. And it certainly hadn't changed, right? Which is why I think what we're doing today and celebrating International Women's Day is so important, because yes, we've made a lot of progress, but actually for a lot of us, it isn't progress enough.
Thank you so much. It's a really, really powerful message. And before I get some of the other ladies to share their inspirational women stories with you, when we was talking as a group, we spoke about a video that we wanted to share with you. And some of you may have seen the movie. And if you haven't, then maybe this is enough of a taster to encourage you to watch the film. It's Hidden Figures. And it's an incredibly powerful moment where it covers multiple topics, not just on the fact that she's a woman, but she's a woman of colour. So if we could run the video, please. There may be adverts.
Storm Dry Masonry Protection Cream waterproofs exterior walls.
We're safe.
For a mold-free and more energy-efficient home. Keep your property damp-free, warm and dry with Storm Dry.
No more running.
Where the hell have you been? Everywhere I look, you're not where I need you to be. It's not my imagination. Now, where the hell do you go every day?
To the bathroom, sir.
To the bathroom. To the damn bathroom. For 40 minutes a day? What are you doing there? We're T-minus 0 here. I put a lot of faith in you.
There's no bathroom for me here.
What do you mean there's no bathroom for you here?
There is no bathroom. There are no colored bathrooms in this building or any building outside the West Campus, which is half a mile away. Did you know that? I have to walk to Timbuktu just to relieve myself. And I can't use one of the handy bikes. Picture that, Mr. Harrison. My uniform, skirt below my knees, my heels, and a simple string of pearls. Well, I don't own pearls. Lord knows you don't pay colored enough to afford pearls.
If you haven't watched
Storm
the
Dry
film.
Masonry Protection
no,
Cream
we continue.
waterproofs exterior walls. For a mold-free
Maybe we should be on
and more
commission for Storm Dry.
energy-efficient home. Keep your property damp-free, warm and dry with Storm Dry.
Okay, so our point there, and I do want to apologise if that triggers anybody, because I'm conscious that it's quite an emotive part of the movie, but that woman showed huge courage to stand up in a room of people that wasn't like her. And the one woman that was in the room that was like her, at times is a supporter, but at other times is not a supporter. And so it just leads to then a perfect question of women that have inspired you in your journey, be it personally or professionally. And I know that obviously you've shared a real personal story, so thank you so much. But then to the other ladies, who's inspired you?
Well, it was quite a simple answer before today, and then we've listened to all of the stories of today, and now I'm blown away by quite how many inspirational people there are out there. I'm always in awe of anyone who stands up to something that's not right, or to some bad behaviour, and I think that people do that on a massive scale, like going back to the suffragettes, like someone like Jolie Brearley, who started up Pregnant Then Screwed, which is just the most incredible organisation supporting women who are treated really badly or struggling with workplace and while pregnant or a mother. But also I think there's people just doing it in really small ways, and calling out bad behaviour at work is something that's just critical. And I'm going to really embarrass Sian, who's from my team, who's sitting here, and someone talked to her really badly once who was much more senior than her, and really kind of talk down the work that she'd done and the effort that she'd put into a really difficult piece of recruitment for them. And Sian took it gracefully, as she always does, and then she reflected on it, and then she went and spoke to that person, who was a man who was, very confident in their career and didn't get challenged very often. And she booked time with him, and she went and told him how he'd made her feel and what effort she'd put in, and all the work that she'd done. And give him his due. He reflected on it and he apologised, and hopefully he's a better person out of the back of it. But I imagine that he'd been doing that for many, many years in his career and never been challenged. And it took someone to stand up and go, that's not right, and I'm going to deal with it. So I think inspiration is happening all the time.
Thank you. I now work in the live entertainment and music business, and a number of you would have probably seen misogyny in music reports. You'd have seen lack of female talent through the music industry. And so when I was asked this question, I kind of reflected about, find me someone really inspirational in the music industry. And Jo Whiley come to mind. And what I really admired about her is the quiet resilience that she embodies. And in my research, she said she once said that her job was simply to show up for the music. And I reflected on that thinking, well, that's really something really incredibly powerful in that. And in an industry that is really loud, really fast, dominated by big male personalities, she shaped that culture by not necessarily being the loudest in the room, but being the one of the most consistent in the room. I admire every time I tune in and watch Glastonbury and she's there just killing it. And you think, that's really impressive. And I think it's that steady influence showing up year after year. Integrity, passion is a real form of resilience that we don't celebrate enough. So that's why I chose her.
It's such a tricky question, isn't it? Women who inspire you, because there's just so many. When I reflected on this, I thought about somebody I worked with in my very first HR job, and I was a recruitment officer, she was the recruitment manager, and her first words to me when she offered me the job was, I'm taking a real chance on you, you've got no experience, you better not let me down. But that was her style. She was so direct, but just so great to work with. She had a real belief in me and, was incredibly supportive and just gave me everything I needed to be successful in the role. And some of the words she said to me really stuck with me throughout my whole career, and I share them with my team now and the junior people who join the team. And it's, be brave, you will make mistakes, but own your mistakes and learn from them, and you'll be a better person because of them. And I think it's absolutely true, because we do. I think someone else said it earlier, we all mess up from time to time, but it's what we learn from that and how we move on from it that I think is important.
Pass the mic. Final question, and then I'll explain why you've all been given a little piece of green paper and potentially, hopefully, a pen. The whole concept is obviously give to gain. and we've had so much shared with all of us today. But can you bring to life where you have created an actual opportunity for somebody? And that could be personally or it could be professionally, where you know you are paying it forward.
Thank you. At Travelodge, we have 70% women in our workforce. 85% of our team members are part-time, and 100% of our manager positions are full-time, were full-time. So you can see where the massive, great big blocker to career progression was there. So 2 years ago, we created part-time manager opportunities. We've now got around about 10% of our hotel managers are on a part-time contract, and it's enabling people, not only people who've got young children to be able to progress their careers, but also people who were maybe going to retire soon, or people who are balancing studies or all sorts of things. But it's been a great opportunity for women to be able to take that step through into management.
Brilliant. That's absolutely inspirational. I think I've probably got two. One, I work for a private organisation where the board hasn't changed. I've been in the company for 15 years and I feel like I really belong there, but I'm still probably one of the newest to the team. But what I can take from my kind of learnings and where I've given to gain is I was in the room. I've been lucky enough to have that seat in the room. And so my job is to make the room better. And for me, that's to really widen the circle and actually get the experts in the room. You know, I've sat there where the boys' club are talking about stuff where the expert is not in the room. So I've actually stopped the conversation, gone and got the expert, brought them in. And actually they're like, got it. Right, now next time, you go get the expert, bring them in the room. So I think probably that's in my professional career, making the room bigger. And in my personal, you know, we've heard loads of stories about give a job to a busy person. Outside of running the business that I'm part of, I'm also a secretary for a grassroots football club that have 26 teams, and we've made a pathway for girls' football. So I feel really proud of that. 2 of the girls have recently got signed up by academies into Saints and Portsmouth Football Club, and I just feel being able to give that opportunity where it was run by men, a committee of, you know, guys, and literally giving that pathway. And yes, I am still one of those people. My son was 8 when he joined the football. He's in the States now. He's 20 years old. And when he come back at Christmas, he went, "Mum, are you still doing that job?" But you're like, I do need to hand it over at some point. But I think that's probably a personal and professional.
For me, the absolute best part of my job is being able to offer development and career opportunities for people. I touched on before when I've been with Hollywood Bowl for 14 years, but I think that's one of the things that has kept me there is, you know, we invest heavily in top talent programs, degree apprenticeship programs, and lots of training and support for people. And I touched on earlier about our centre manager, our general manager population. So we introduced our first top talent program probably 13 years ago. It's one of the first things I did when I joined the business, and it's just gone from strength to strength. We now have sort of development programs at every level across all specialisms as well. And, you know, just to sort of think about the amount of people across the business that have, you know, been able to develop, and you know, a lot of people go into hospitality, leisure, retail without the thought of, I'm going to stay in this is my career, but actually helping people to understand what a fabulous career that they can have in our industry and giving them the development and the tools to make that happen is what really sort of motivates me to get out of bed every day.
For those of you who don't know, Access Group, we're a private equity-owned software group. We support multiple industry verticals and horizontals. We're a UK success story. We're over £1 billion in terms of turnover, headquartered out of the UK, and I run one of the largest divisions in the company. We're a truly global division. We have colleagues, 2,000 colleagues across the globe, pretty much in all the regions of the world. At Access, we're great believers in diversity and how we promote diversity, particularly gender diversity. We have software is another industry where sadly we don't have enough of a gender mix. It is very, very male dominated. So we have a women in software empowerment group. We've worked very hard across all our managing director and GM population to improve the number of women. I'm happy to report that we're almost at 50% at the company level. And of course, I've got to walk the talk, right? I run one of the largest divisions in terms of my leadership team. Victoria, who's in our marketing team, actually did the math for me. We're at 51% women in my leadership team. And more importantly, we have a female CTO, which for those of you who know, it is much easier to find a purple unicorn than a female CTO. So I feel very proud that I've secured that. But, I just as much as I'm proud of having 51% women, I'm also proud that I've got very diverse 49% men as well. It's really important that we reflect the geographies and the customers that we serve. But also, I'm a great believer, as I said, even though we're a software business, I'm very keen that we are part of the community that we serve, which is the hospitality industry. That's what we serve. And so we're part of the Boardwalk Initiative, which is a not-for-profit. We support mentoring in the hospitality industry for senior women in the hospitality industry to secure board positions. Because yes, it's great that in hospitality you've got 51% of the women are women in the workforce, but only 7% are in board level positions, particularly in executive and C-level positions. That has to change. And so I was very keen that I play my part in helping support that and fund that. And I know we've had some successes as a part of Boardwalk, and I'm really proud to play my small part in supporting that.